Good morning, everybody. My name is Antonio Gomez. I will be your moderator and technical support for today's session. If you could please hold all questions until the Q&A portion of the webinar, or if you want to raise your hand, we can unmute you. We would appreciate that. There's also the Q&A function on the Zoom platform. If you look underneath your screen, you'll see either a Q&A icon, or you're going to see the three dots, and you'll be able to open that up and be able to see it. I will also go ahead and, while we've got everybody here, drop the slides in the chat so everybody can see them, so you can follow along. This webinar will be offering closed captioning as well, so you can feel free to go ahead and turn that on if you want to get a transcript. We will also be recording this webinar so that it's available at a later date. A recording and all materials will be available after the conclusion of this webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function. If you have any questions about that, put it in the chat and we can help you out. All right, so we are going to, sorry, I've got a question to see if we can open up for everybody. Mark, if you hit the drop down underneath, you should be able to change from host and panelist to everyone.
Yeah, it's not available.
It's not available. Oh,
No.
Interesting. So once we get us kicked off, I'm going to go into the settings and see if I can fix that. I am seeing Joel with a hand raised. Was that accidental or on purpose? All right. I'm going to go ahead and go to the polls. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right. We're going to get us started with a couple of polls. I'm going to start poll number 1, that it's about local areas. So let me go ahead and launch that poll, and then we should be good to get started. All right. Everybody should see that up on their screen. Let us know where you're from. All right. So we got most of the responses. I'm going to go ahead and share those results. So we got a lot of Chicago, a lot of Northern Illinois, decent amount of Central and Southern, and some statewide. Happy to have you all here. If we could go to the next slide, please, we'll launch another poll. All right, and this one is for our local areas. So let me go ahead and launch that poll for you guys as well, and let us know what local area you work with. Or what's your role in the WIOA system, my bad. All right, we've got that launched. There's definitely a lot of Title I. I think there was a different poll that might have had a little bit more specifically within Title I. I apologize for that.
Yeah, that should have been one on what their role is, Antonio.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and share the other one. And again, apologies. There we go. Title I performance partner. I'll go ahead and launch that one. There we go. That looks a lot more right. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, getting a lot more nuance with this one. I apologize. All right, looks like we got most of our answers. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share the results. Looks like we've got a decent amount of Title I director, performance, a lot of career planner. Happy to see you all here. Happy to see all of you here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Mark Burgess, who will be our speaker for today.
Thanks, Antonio. Appreciate you kicking things off today. If you would, when you get that chance, open up the chat. But I would ask, I think it works a lot cleaner if you all can utilize the Q&A as Antonio described below rather than chat, because what it does is when you enter a question there, we can respond directly to that question and it doesn't get mingled in with other comments and chat discussion and questions when it's in the chat. So if you wouldn't mind trying to use the Q&A, the questions and answer that's there on the bottom of your screen, uh, near the chat, but not the chat. But again, thanks all for joining us. I don't know how many of you are here from LWIA 7 and the Career Connect system. Um, we know you had your sessions last week, and some of you may have still chose to join us, so we welcome you along with the rest of our Title I local area staffs. Um, these first couple sections of this on supportive services and follow-up services uh, will be a little bit more specific to the other 21 LWIAs, but certainly the information will be good for you. And then the Q&A will apply to everyone. Stick around if you want to. It'll be great. Today we're going to have Paula Berry and Laura Dom presenting primarily. We do have Jim Potts on to help us answer those questions that you're submitting. We'll try to answer as many as we can, either um, as we're presenting or in the chat or Q&A pods. But certainly, if we have any unanswered by the end of the at the end of the session, we'll come back to those. Go to the next slide there, Paula. As I mentioned, we're focusing, finalizing really the services matrix itself with all of those tabs. The last couple of tabs being supportive services and follow-up services for adults, dislocated worker, and includes youth as well. Paula and Laura will cover a little bit more of the nuances and the differences between those programs. And we'll finish out the second half of today's webinar with an open Q&A. We'll let you have an opportunity to open up your microphone and ask questions. But before we do that, we have all the questions that went unanswered in our prior three sessions. And so we have those on slides. We want to cover those, and then we'll see maybe what you have come in today thinking maybe we'll already be answering it. Uh, by a show of hands, can anyone let me know if you got into the system today? And everything should have went live late Friday night. Laura sent out the actual services matrix, both the clean version and the cross out and red line version last Friday. So if anyone can show me a raise your hand and let me know if you were able to get in there today. Yep. So we've got quite a few. Great. So if you did and you've got some questions on what you're seeing, please bring those up when we open up the microphones so we can see. Hopefully, I didn't see. I was out yesterday. I didn't see any emails coming through, at least including me, that there were issues. So I hope that's great that everything went through successful, and now we're using the new services matrix and everything's going to go smooth moving forward. But certainly we know there will be some questions as we move along here. So I'm going to turn it over to Paula to get the discussion started today. I'll be tracking all your questions and helping everyone in respond to those. Thanks.
Actually, Mark, it's me. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go over the supportive services for the Title I-B participants. Supportive services are necessary to enable a WIOA participant to successfully participate in those activities. And WIOA services for adults and dislocated workers, either career or training. The supportive services must be allowable in local policies. So all career planners should be very familiar with the local board's policies on the provision of supportive services. The need for those supportive services must be identified in the IEP or ISS or Universal Career Plan. Those are going to be used interchangeably. And it should be provided after a staff-assisted career service, such as career planning or assessments or something like that, to document the discussions that justify the need for those supportive services. And so note, supportive services do not trigger enrollment. They are not allowed to be provided as the first enrolling service and do not extend participation or program exit in WIOA programs. 1A and 1D supportive services, adult and dislocated worker supportive services can only be provided to WIOA participants. If WIOA should be the funder of last resort if no other funding for support is available. So that's where the local referral process comes into play and knowing what's available in your local area to assist your participants. And TGO 1016 change 3 and our state supportive services policy is a fantastic guide on what can and can't be allowed. The tab in the matrix lists all of the supportive services in the current IWDS system, and we're working to update those for the new IWDS 2.0 system. Youth supportive services is a program element. It's program element number 7, and it can be provided as a follow-up service and therefore can occur after exit without delaying the exit date. That's only applicable to youth, and it's several of the, there's 5 elements that you can provide after during follow-up that do not extend the exit for youth only. So here's a question that we received. What if there is a need to provide uniforms prior to a participant's training start date? How would you document the supportive services? Well, the answer is you would go ahead and go in and record a supportive service uniforms service and indicate in the career plan whether and why that's needed, and add the case note to it to reflect that the need to provide that supportive service prior to the training start date. You're going to also determine that you need that information when you're doing the career exploration, when you're doing the ETPL review. And so those are the enrolling services that then trigger participation, and then you can add the training in the supportive service uniforms. Note that process also applies to tools and safety equipment, and those would be documented under the tools, equipment, supportive service line. Another question, is it okay to provide a supportive service for transportation to prepare for licensing exams after the related occupational skills training is ended? And the answer is yes. The supportive service must be listed in the career plan, and case note should provide the information that indicates that it's directly related to successfully completing the training licensure exam or obtaining and retaining employment. So the related career service or youth element must be documented if provided by the local workforce area. Another question we got, a discussion with my participant made me aware that a gas card is needed to attend practice sessions to pass a licensing exam related to their occupational skills training that ended 3 weeks prior. This was not included in the IEP already. Am I allowed to provide this? And the answer is yes. Once you not find out that you have that need, the participant has that need for the gas card, you go into the career plan and justify that need. You document the supportive service. It's not a change to their career plan. So you're just going to case note that need and not, there's no episode is required. Sorry, I've got that wrong. Okay. All right.
Good. Thank you, Laura. Good morning. So I will continue the presentation on the services matrix with the follow-up services tab. So it's pink, it's the tab to the far bottom right, and 1A and 1D and youth are all follow-up are all included on that same pink tab. So for 1A, adult and dislocated worker follow-up service, the key to this is no matter what, it starts with employment. Might be while they're still participating, and that employment is attached to their occupational goal, their goal for their job. It can go up to 12 months. When you're transitioning someone from participation or into follow-up, you should always reference the matrix tab. There are specific activities that are done during follow-up, and that separates them from active participation type career and training services. And again, it's okay to provide follow-up and expected during participation. You can start it if their employment goal occurs or they enter employment prior to their last service. Follow-up activities, the key to determining the difference when you're doing follow-up or participant level services is it's related to their employment. So they're all geared towards retaining the employment that they entered into. And then we need to document the specific activities you're doing in case notes. In MIS, there'll be one follow-up service entered. So to indicate everything you're doing as part of the follow-up, it needs to be in really detailed case notes. So again, refer to the matrix. There's an outline of all the different activities, and as well as the state policy always. Okay, we actually have a poll about 1A and 1D follow-up services. So which of the following is not an allowable follow-up service for adult and dislocated workers? Answer choices and select one, please. So counseling individuals about their workplace, contacting them or their employers to verify their employment, contacting individuals or their employers to help secure even a better paying job, assisting individuals and employers in resolving work-related problems, or connecting them to peer support groups. Which one is not an allowable follow-up activity? And I think we have a poll.
Sorry, I do have the poll. I was just,
Oh,
it got
thanks.
lost in a little bit of the, there we go.
It's okay, thanks. Okay, how are those answers coming along? Are we
Looks like we've plateaued a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and end the
okay?
poll and share our results. Thank you, everyone,
Thanks.
for participating.
Okay. So I see a lot of a good fair amount and even percentage across the board on the different answers. So let's explain these activities a little better to eliminate any confusion about what is not allowed. The key to this answer is that it's B. Now, you might be contacting individuals or employers to simply say, "Are you working?" That's allowed to do. That's performance tracking. Counseling individuals about the workplace during follow-up, that is absolutely allowed. It's not career planning. It's counseling them about a job they already have to make sure everything's going okay during the 12 months after follow-up. Here's the list from the definition. So These are all the allowable types of activities that you should be doing. Employment verification. Are you working? Are you going to school? Okay, send me the pay stub, send me your credential. Very important, not a follow-up activity. There needs to be a little bit more going on to make sure they're really set in that their job, that employment. So counseling individuals, contacting them to help secure better paying job, not just how's it going, assisting them in resolving any work-related problems. And this key to this is it's completely acceptable to be talking to employers the whole time to get their side of the story too. That's a good practice for follow-up. Connecting them to peer support groups. If you find out something's going on, yeah, maybe it's past the 90 days. They don't need to be a full-blown participant again. But there are things that the law makes available after that participation phase. Then if people who are continuing on, maybe they need a bit more education. No, you're not providing the career services, but there's nothing wrong with providing them information during follow-up. And then, of course, referrals to other community resources.
Paula, I want to make sure that everyone knows that I've attached in the chat. It's an attachment to the follow-up policy. It's suggested questions to ask during follow-up that will assist you in ensuring that you're doing what you need to do in order to help those individuals during that period of time.
Perfect. Yes, those are great. I was kind of searching for some of those in my mind as I was going over those. So that is awesome. Thank you. Okay, so under our follow-up services, that listing of all the activities, we wanted to highlight this workplace counseling. So I saw in the response to the poll questions, a lot of people said workplace counseling as one that wasn't allowed. And I get that because you're like, you can't do career planning after they're exited. That's a participation level career service, right? So follow-up workplace counseling can be done, and it's just giving a bit of advice when they're already on their path. They don't need you to help them in training or employment anymore, but you should be doing things like this once they're in employment. Just some tips on written communication. Please see the attachment Laura put for conversational points to get this conversation started with them. You can help them, succeed in that participation. Are they having issues? Are they late? Why? Maybe work with their employer. I know you can't provide them transportation, but certainly you can help them understand the importance. And then help talk them through demands of working. Maybe it's their first time with full-time employment. Just how to listen to their supervisors, working with their peers, appropriate attire. Maybe they just have a couple questions like, is this going to be okay for tomorrow? Including personal safety, equipment, and clothing, and then things as simple as just being on time and how important that could be. And stay until the end. Maybe that good practice in talking to their employer. You don't want to call them out, but they told you they leave a little early, and you can help them there. Okay, so we're going to do a side-by-side of what is the active career service while they're participating and the difference between workplace counseling. So while they're participating, there's a career service to be reported when you refer them to employment and placement assistance. And then there's active participation career planning. During follow-up, as I just explained, it's workplace counseling. So referred to employment, placement assistance might be their last active service. Then you transition into follow-up and counsel them about that job that you placed them in. The career planner actively matches them with employers and job openings, and then you're providing advice to them about that decision. And then you can even help them throughout the entire application process. Then you wind up in follow-up, and again, they're maintaining that employment as a former WIOA participant. And then this occurs after that last active service date was finally determined. And then this is an informational slide that provides a bunch of examples that might be going on here between the two. You can actually be researching and analyzing their experience while they're participating. You're not going to be doing that in the follow-up career counseling. You already figured that out, and that's why you enrolled and served them all that time and finally ended up with a job. Follow-up services for youth. This, again, is found. This is the definition in the screenshot, and it is on the same exact tab as 1A, 1D, just below. And there are some key points to keep in mind to differentiate the differences between adult dislocated worker follow-up and now the youth. So follow-up for youth must be made available. This is different. So this is required for a minimum of 12 months from exit. So follow-up for youth is tied to exit. That is unlike adult and dislocated workers. That's the employment tie. Youth are at exit. And these are considered critical services at exit. And they're aimed at ensuring that they're successful in employment and everything they're doing. After everything you did with them, now we have to keep that work going, and a lot is allowed here for youth. So this can include regular contact with their employer and make sure you're assisting in addressing all the work-related problems as they arise, right? So we can kind of nip things in the bud here for a youth that you thought was on their way, but you can still have all these opportunities to keep helping them during follow-up with a different level of assistance, but it's important. And they can begin immediately, again, following the last expected date of their service. And the thing with youth follow-up is they look just like some of the youth elements that are provided during their participation. They trigger enrollment. So that's what we have to learn to determine the difference when youth are in follow-up. So always refer to the matrix. They will never change the exit date. Even though one of the things you do might look like an element, that's not going to flip the switch and change their exit date or trigger re-enrollment in the program whatsoever. It's one follow-up code, and then you have to be very conscious of case noting everything you're doing under follow-up. Supportive services are allowed during youth follow-up. I'm reading over here from the screenshot right out of the matrix. Adult mentoring, that's a youth element with specific rules. It's allowed as youth post-exit follow-up service. Financial literacy education, services that provide all that LMI. So it's not active career planning, it's counseling about the workplace, and then activities that help prepare youth transition to their post-secondary education and training. So all of those are allowed during youth follow-up and might be needed. So all of this, of course, you're going to determine in their ISS. Yes, this follow-up might be needed, even though they're on their way, they don't need any more active services. So we have a question. What are youth follow-up supportive services? So this is like layered. As you see, supportive services is a type of follow-up. So this is like, looks like a double service. What are youth follow-up supportive services? This came right out of the chat. So the supportive services that are allowed in follow-up only apply to Title I youth. Just simply look at the follow-up tab. Whatever you see on the follow-up tab for youth, they're allowed as a follow-up supportive services, as long as they are included in your local policy. So yeah, all supportive services that are allowed for youth during participation are allowed during follow-up as deemed necessary. They need to support another youth program element like follow-up, and all the rules apply, your local policy and then the ISS. Okay, so here are some general guidelines when it comes to follow-up, because there are rules and it's a lot is set in your local policy. Career planners always need to determine with the participant which follow-up services are going to best suit their circumstances. They kind of need to be predetermined and not just random activities. Evaluations are used to determine appropriate follow-up, and they need to be provided as often as necessary during the 12 months, at least every 30 days for the first few months at a minimum, and then at least once quarterly for the remainder of the 12-month period. Even though, performance check-ins aren't an activity, this time frame does allow. So while you're doing the act of career counseling and all those great things for them, doesn't hurt to go ahead and figure out things and document it for performance outcomes such as supplemental employment, if they wound up in post-secondary training, and all of that.
Paula, you got a second? I can interject something.
Yeah.
This is Jim. Hi, everybody. For that last slide that Paula just shown, it's important to understand, though, you have to look at your local policies, because from my experience in the field, some of our local policies are more stringent, where the state's policies states you must follow up at a minimum once a month, every 30 days for the first 3 months, and then at least once a quarter afterward. I'm familiar with some local policies that require all 12 months to have follow-up. So make sure you're familiar with your local policy. That's all I got, Paula.
Paula, this.
Sorry, I was going on this slide. So just like Jim said, LWIBs need to establish their local policies that determine what are appropriate follow-up and when. So they can't be more lax than the state policy, but like Jim said, pay attention, because if yours is more stringent, you need to follow that. So with the issuance of the new state policy, all the boards need to examine their own local policy and update anything as appropriate to make sure it's aligning with federal and state guidance. And then everyone, all the career planners and coaches need to be aware of their own local policy, and look at that when you're evaluating follow-up needs for all your individuals, all your customers, and then post-exit quarterly reporting of participant earnings, if applicable, is not always consistent or reported as follow-up. So that's just a performance check-in. Okay.
All right, this is me.
Thanks, Laura.
Question, would you use referral to employment and placement activities to record the time spent doing paperwork for a work experience or an OJT? And the answer to this is no. Any type of paperwork, any type of reporting, any type of time spent that is an administrative function and not a service provided or a benefit to the customer does not count as a service. That is strictly an administrative function, and it should be captured in a career service. The definition for referral to employment and placement is one-on-one. It's assistance in a one-on-one setting that matches that participant with an existing job, with the existing job openings that are related to the participant's experience, goals, and interests, or with the training program the individual's completed. So a lot of times this is after they've done the training, and if you've assisted them in getting that employment, then that's counted. But otherwise, it would not be. And the key to this is to consider that costs incurred by staff directly associated with the establishment and monitoring of work-based training activities can be counted towards the minimum training expenditure requirement. So you want to make sure that you're not counting this in referral to employment and placement. that is a part of the OJT, part of the work experience, and it gets counted there, so that you can ensure that it is getting counted towards that minimum training expenditure requirement. If they have prior experience or no prior experience and you're just exploring with them, then you can record career information services. Could be an option. It depends on exactly what you're doing for the individual. But no, if it's an administrative function, it does not get, it's not a service and it doesn't get logged anywhere as a service. Okay, so this is definitely one I had to take because I answered it incorrectly in the chat the last time. So I wanted to make sure that I apologize and that I got this question so I can make sure that I put it right. Employment 101 in Illinois WorkNet encompasses several service lines. I feel like it could go under short-term pre-voc or work preparation skills. In your opinion, what is the correct service line? Well, it's not a service because it's not one-on-one staff assisted. They're typically taking that by themselves. So since it's not a one-on-one staff assisted service, you do not log it as a staff assisted career service. So if that individual takes employment 101 and you're working with them on a one-on-one basis to help understand the results of the assessment, anything along those lines, talking to them about it, then that would make it a career service. But until you provide that one-on-one staff assistance, it doesn't count. This should be added to the career plan and to the system. Again, it's not completing the 101 is not a career service or a youth element. The next question is, please re-explain adding service episode versus general case notes. There was a slide in the 1A, 1D session that explained this. For example, someone earlier gave a good reminder in the chat of what slides to utilize as resources for episodes versus general case notes and a good example to support it. So episodes are a direct service or a benefit received by the customer. This requires participation, so the episodes keep participation open, will not prompt the 90-day exit rule. General standard case notes are typically for tracking those administrative functions, what you would call case management activities, and they're really not a benefit or service to the customer. So one-way check-ins, asking about their pay stubs, any certificates they've received, any questions about employment for performance tracking, they're important, but they are not serving the customers directly, and therefore they are not included as an episode. Those are tracked through general case notes. For healthcare programs, if an individual isn't accepted into the healthcare program but is taking general education classes such as English and biology to apply for the healthcare program, then do career planners open an occupational skills training line and not a prerequisite training line? And that is correct. Prerequisite training line is different for workforce system and for the educational system. For workforce, the prerequisite training is basically a program of study that leads to the next program of study in a career pathway. So it would be a CNA to an LPN, for example. If you're taking those classes and English and biology is part of the curriculum for that healthcare program, then it needs to be rolled into that occupational skills training line. So this is a continued comment. We were previously told to only open the occupational skills training line when they were officially accepted into the program. And so while waiting to be accepted into the program of study, a participant takes classes or courses that are part of that program listed in the curriculum, then they are included in that training service. And again, we want to stress 10-19-22 change 1. That provides all kinds of definitions on training and how and when to report. It defines enrollment and training as the first day that a participant attends the training, either virtually or in person as applicable. So it doesn't have to be the program. It can be those classes leading up to, or let me take that back. It has to be part of the program study, but it doesn't have to be when you're accepted into the program. It can be as you're getting ready to get into the program.
Thanks, Laura.
Mhm.
Okay, another question. How long of a pause can an individual be in future scheduled service? So that's the new label. It used to be plan gap holding. Now it's future scheduled service for 1A, 1D, and youth. And the answer is between 91 and 180 days. So as you see I mean, I can read the definition to you, but as Mark stated, it wouldn't be 90 because that's exit. So a participant can be scheduled for future services when a situation arises that will temporarily prevent them for greater than 90 days, consecutive calendar days. And then they're going to be planned to return for a future service. Then they can be scheduled for more than 90 days, but no more than 180 days out. So as we talked about that definition, all the extenuating services that are the participant needs to stay in and they're going to need it, but it can't be more than 100 days away for you to be able to log this and plan their future scheduled service. Another question these are all straight out of the chat, might have been a bit reworded or cleaned up, but the question is, when our Title II adult education provider is doing the GED classes for our out-of-school youth participants, shall we enroll them in the alternative school dropout recovery, that's element 2, even if Title I youth funds are not even paying for the education or any component of the element? And the answer is yes. Programs need to report the alternative school dropout recovery youth element for out-of-school youth, even when they're in non-WIOA Title I funded secondary education, such as adult ed or high set, preparing for the high school equivalency test. So this is a secondary education element. The key to element 2 is that you are doing and funding the list of all the other acceptable activities. So please see the service matrix, and examples are like you are coaching them, planning their educational development, and then assisting them with these placements. So you are doing something even if it's not direct education. Please see Teagle 1016 Change 3 that discusses this. It's only for out-of-school youth, and this element will trigger them to be in the youth credential attainment rate and the youth MSG. Okay, this is going to be another live poll, and it's going to be a true or false. So there is a fact to consider. One of the services matrix version 2 for 2025, one of the changes is to the Youth Career Planning Service. It's now an element under LMI element 13. The new service label and code for this became available for the first time upon deployment on Friday, April 11th. So is this true or false in the poll? For all current and new youth, I must add this new Youth Career Planning Service code since it has never existed in the drop-down prior to the go live. If provided as their first youth element, it will trigger enrollment. Service episodes for this youth career planning activity will be added and will extend their participation now. So true or false? Let's give you a couple seconds, and then I'll give you the answer when you're ready.
I think we've got most everybody's answer now.
Okay, so the answer is true. I just wanted to reiterate that because I did get a question. I'm not sure I made it clear in the youth session for this. I said no updates, but everyone needs this the first time you do this, that service is available now. So please make sure it gets added appropriately. I see a lot of people putting false. So this is one of the things you must do, and it will become apparent. The old youth career planning service that had case management at the end. So that's the key in finding this. It's brand new in your drop down. So please make sure, because if you don't, you're not going to have the option. You won't be properly reporting youth career planning because, again, now it's an enrolling service that you're doing for your youth. It's providing labor market information, advice, all those types of things. So get credit for that, please. Okay, I lost my control. Okay, this is about the youth element called education offered concurrently with workforce preparation. If a youth is in so otherwise known as ICAPS, right? If a youth is in an ICAPS program, would we open an occupational skills training line and this line and this element? So two, for example, a youth in a CNA ICAPS, does an occupational skills line get opened and the element called education offered concurrently with workforce prep? And the answer is no. ICAPS programs need to be recorded by using that code, the label education offered concurrently with workforce prep. It's right in the matrix with a full-blown definition. That is the element you report, and not all of the individual elements that are rolled up into this big entire program. If an occupational skills training is provided under the ICAPS, don't report a separate OST. That would be over-reporting it. The ICAPS will trigger your training performance measures. So with this, because there's that occupational component, they're going to be in your YCAR, youth credential, and measurable skills gain. And please refer to the Adult Education and Integrated Career and Academic Preparation System, that's ICAPS policy. Can never remember that acronym. Oh. So another question, if a customer is trying to become an LPN and needs to take prerequisite classes before they are accepted into the program, then is that not considered prerequisite? No. The answer is no. Courses or classes that are just standalone and not part of that occupational skills training program should not be reported as a prerequisite training. Again, the key is those couple classes would never wind up in a credential or certificate. A prerequisite training, by definition, could end up in its own certificate or credential and then the additional occupational skills training, right? So courses or classes alone do not provide a recognized certification or credential. And even, prerequisite training courses, yes, alone could or do result in a credential. Quick follow-up on this. So what do you put in the system to recognize those classes that aren't a prerequisite? They're not the occupational skills training. Well, for youth, it's the last and final element. I'm going to quote it. It's so for youth, when you do those, it's post-secondary prep and transition activities. For 1A, 1D, this isn't training. So there is no reportable 1A, 1D service for this. It should be documented in their IEP as needed, but there's no adult service. But for sure, make sure when you do this, you recognize it with that youth element 14. Jim pointed that out, that there could be a follow-up to that. So, okay, I'll hand it back over to, no, this is me. Sorry, Laura. Another question, what date should be used to report when a training service, such as occupational skills training, has ended? Okay, this is part of your 10 Training and Employment Notice 1922, Change 1 homework. So the answer is this. When is the training end date? This is the last date the participant attended a service provided as part of the training program. So this only includes exams if those exams are provided as part of the training program and paid for by the provider or school. So you need to look in their training program description. And if the training program clearly includes the exam, you don't end that occupational skills training until the time they take that exam, even if it's a month or two after the occupational skills training. We don't see this happening often, but this 10/19/22 sheds light on this. So we do need to recognize it. So in other words, if the ITA covered the exam as part of that program, the date will be the date of the exam. So if the exam was not paid for by the ITA, the provider wasn't covering it, but you want to help them pay for the cost of that NCLEX, that is where the other supportive services comes into play. And then you document that after the training end date, because that has to be the last date of class. So when the exam is happening after the course ended and it's not a part of the training program, you need to use the date they last attended, then document the supportive service later when the benefit was provided for that exam cost. And then all of this should be supported in the ISS or IEP. Okay, and this, I'll hand it over to Laura now. This is straight out of that 10/1922 change 1. So please refer to that when in doubt. Okay, handing it back over to Laura.
All right, thank you very much. Question is, if we align academic, school or training provider classes or programs with the work-based learning occupation components, does that address the academic piece you wanted aligned with the work-based learning? Meaning, we identify programs that would align with the work-based learning, but they are not enrolled in training. But we have identified academic industry classes that do align. Does that work? And so the answer is on the next slide. And no, work experiences for youth must include an academic and occupational education components that include the information necessary to understand and work in specific industries and our occupation. So they have to be related to that occupation. And a good example that we often use is if a youth is doing a work experience in a hospital, the occupational education could be learning about the duties of the different types of hospital occupations, such as a phlebotomist, a radiology tech, or a physical therapist. The academic education could be learning some of the information individuals in those occupations need to know, such as why blood type matters, the name of a specific bone in the body, or the function of a specific ligament. So the academic education needs to make sure the academic education applies to that specific industry and or occupation. And if you can combine it that way, then it is acceptable, but otherwise it's not. Does the non-WIOA partner-funded training need to be an occupation on the demand occupation training list and in demand to provide supportive services? And the answer is the non-WIOA partner-funded training does not need to be an occupation on the DOTL and in demand to provide supportive services, because our other partners do not have to abide by the DOTL. They may have something else that they have to go through. So, but we can provide those supportive services. But for the individual to obtain employment after training, it would ideally be in an in-demand occupation on the DOTL. So just because that other partner-funded training is something that is that they're offering, if it's not going to lead to an occupation within your local area, that's not going to be a positive outcome for you. So you want to make sure that whatever that training is something that's in demand in the local area where they can get a job. With the changes in the services matrix, are we going to have a deadline to update files for participants who are now showing as over the 90-day active services limits due to their last enrolling service being group workshops / job clubs? And the answer is yes. You need to review your one-on-one services provided to each participant whose last service is group workshops and job clubs, ASAP. And the date that is out there is Thursday, May 1st. So career planners need to review those services that are being provided, ensure that they haven't provided other career services. If they have, they need to update that. If they haven't, then they need to exit those customers. And other considerations that you need to think about is you need to make sure that you're doing this for proper reporting and compliance. If you do it by May 1st and make sure that this happens, then that'll be less requests that you'll have to make to OET to fix those. And definitely use the days since last active service report to find those individuals. Where can I find copies of the service matrix? The updated service matrix is attached to ePolicy Chapter 4.2 Career Planning, and it's located on the ePolicy portal. This is where you should always look for the most current version. The red line version shows what has changed from the original version, and we have those in both Adobe and Excel formats. I sent an email on the 11th at 2:41 to everyone that is on the list for ePolicy updates. There were 4 versions attached: the PDF, the Excel, the clean, and the red line. Note that those that get those emails is listservs created out of the LWACS, the Local Workforce Area Contact System. And there should be a dedicated person in each local workforce area to keep those updated. I know that those probably need to be looked at because I got probably over 50 undeliverable messages when I sent out those emails the other day. So you need to look at that. But if anybody has a role such as one-stop operator, local board staff, CEOs, they need to make sure that they are listed properly in the LWAC system so they can get access to these updates. Additionally, if you don't hold one of those roles, make sure that you go into ePolicy and you can sign up to be notified when anything is updated in the system and added to the system. So you will get those emails go out nightly about 7 o'clock in the evening after something's been updated in the system. So that's kind of a real-time update if you're not part of that group that gets those emails. Okay. Now questions. So I'll let Mark take over from here.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Thanks, Paula. So we've been trying to answer as many of the questions as we could in the chat, and especially in the Q&A, but there are quite a few outstanding questions. Before we jump into those, please look at the ones that are answered. You can't see open questions. Only we as hosts and panelists can see those. So if you've submitted one, we're going to try to get to them. We may not get to all of them. And so, bear with us. We'll get to what we can. We've got a little bit of time here. But going to the ones that are answered, we're not going to answer those again because they've been answered here in the Q&A section. But one thing I want to remind everyone of, for the last 4 or 5 years, as we've been presenting webinars, we've tried to give you all the tools you need to think through these questions on your own. Now, I understand that leaves some openings at times, but we're trying to get you to have the confidence. I think a lot of you know the answers to your questions, but you don't feel confident that you know the answer. The information that we provide you primarily comes from those Tegels, sometimes from TENS, and sometimes does come from guidance from our Region 5 or national office that we have to share with you. But it isn't, revolutionary kind of information. It's usually right there in front of you. Or it can be taken from another question and response that we provide you in emails or in other webinars. So I challenge all of you to think through a lot of your questions One example is, and Christine, I'm going to pick on you today, just because you asked the same question 2 or 3 different times, but really the response is the same. So read your question to yourself before you even submit it, because you probably can come up with the answer. And that response isn't to you, just you, Christine. That's to everyone, because a lot of the questions, and so there'll be a couple of them I probably won't get to because they've been answered already, maybe in a different way, presented as a question, but we've answered those. So we really challenge you to use the FAQ also that's being developed. We do have to, as a reminder, have to update the FAQ online, but we're going to be adding all of these questions to it. But if we don't kind of coordinate the questions and responses, that FAQ is going to be so long, it'll be very difficult to utilize because it'll be hard to find questions within it. So when we put things up there, we are going to combine questions that you've submitted, whether it be an email or in FAQ or in a webinar. We'll be combining them because they are similar enough that we can provide one answer that addresses all of them. So for example, another example, trying to find the question now. Sorry. I'll come back to it when I find it. But I'm going to start going through some of these questions. Paula, Laura, and Jim, if you feel like you've got an answer to that, please chime in. A few of you have your hand raised in the chat. That may have been from early on when we asked you to raise your hand if you've been in the system this morning or yesterday. If you want to lower those hands so we know that you're not asking to speak, but we will try to find people with their hand raised and ask that you open your microphone. So one of the questions outstanding, and this is one James asked in the chat, and then again in the Q&A. Can you enroll a customer in occupational sales training and then put them in future scheduled services if the start date is 3 months out before the first day of class in adult or dislocated worker or youth? And right now, James, you can't because the system doesn't allow it. And some of these, Christy, if you're on and Career Connect, at least as long as it still remains in effect, operational, if you've got a response that's different, please chime in and let us know that. So Antonio, if you'll open up Christy's line for any opportunity to speak. But for those using IWDS right now, you're not able to do that, but we're working in our discovery and development of iWIDS 2.0, where this will be an option for you. Yeah, and as Laura reminded, please put the Q&As in the question and answer, because we've got so many questions and other comments in the chat. It's hard to follow all of the questions in the chat. So we do ask you, any new questions, please put in the question and answer page. Now, I'm going to go back to the one slide. Paula, if you can go back to the slide on the 90, 100-day. I got thinking about this, so I want to ask everyone, because this relates to another question. Um, page slide 30, Paula. And I'm trying to find that question now. Sorry, I thought I had it up here and I'm not seeing it. There was one someone submitted with like 30 days later. Why can't I find that question now? Sorry, everyone. Basically, the question was, if someone's participating, had a service, and then they found out they want to enroll in a training program, but can't enroll within that 90 days, can they put that in there as a future planned service? And the reason I'm asking from help from my colleagues or anyone else out there that feels like they might have a good answer is because I was sitting there thinking, if I had a service, let's just use some basic dates on January 1st. And I'm saying on this slide, you can't have a future plan service 90 days or less. But what if I don't have another service come February 15th? I've already used 45 days. Does that still mean, and I find out I want to start training, let's say on May 1st, which is certainly further than 90 days from January 1. certainly within the 180 days that we say, but it's not 90 days from the date I know I want to register. So I don't know, Jim, I think you may be looking like you're ready to jump in there. Uh,
Yeah,
so yeah, if you want to help, maybe it's 90 days from the date you know it, or is it 90 days from the last service?
I think the reason why the question went away, I believe it was from Paul Andrews, and he'd
Okay.
asked about 94 days, I think it was. And I just provided the feedback that in our current IWDS, you can record services up to 120 days without getting that edit that locks you out. So if somebody was at 94 days, they would still be able to record the training or any service, not necessarily even training. But if you go over 120 days, our current logic in IWS is you're going to be not able to record the service, and that's when it has to come up to you guys, Paul, Mark and Paula. At least that's how it had been working. I'm not sure about with this future service. I don't remember testing it for that. If that's used as the logic for not getting caught up with that 120 days, or excuse me, that 120-day limit.
And it applies to the future scheduled service, even though it's not like an active reported service, that rule does apply, that it needs to be entered in the same time frame as an active service.
Okay, great. Thanks for helping clarify there. And some of these questions, I think I might have to ask you to open up some phone line or microphones because in asking the question, it was about something that was being discussed. And without that kind of basis, it's hard to get the question to understand. So, LaDonna, you may need to help in. I'm gonna bring this one up. What about the 10-day service data entry issue for career planning with opening the service line for current youth? In reality, the service was provided as part of development of the ISS, which could have been as much as a year ago. So how would the career would they backdate that in the service line? And I think there's some context there, LaDonna, that we may need to help out on that.
Ladonna, you should be free to talk if you
Mark,
would to go ahead and speak.
Mark, Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can all hear you. Thanks.
Okay, just making sure. So Paula went over a slide about the career planning, and it stated that on the quiz for true and false, the all current and new youth needed a career planning service line. And so my question is really, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Do we have to go back and add a career planning line for all current youth? Because career planning happened, could be a year ago when the youth did their ISS. So that's my question. Or is it only going forward that any current youth, if we provide career planning, we add that service? So basically, what am I doing with my current youth? Am I going back and adding a career planning line, which is going to be in violation of my 10-day rule?
No.
Question mark?
So, okay,
that's my question. So like, how do I do career planning for current youth when I haven't provided that service and it could be a year or 2 years?
So what we all need to do, so don't go back and add the current label youth career planning. Don't backdate that. Add it for all youth when it is done, because the old youth career planning case management for youth had completely different logic and rules attached to it and definition and policy, right? So we don't want to use that anymore. That was a pre-enrollment back in the day. Now, the second you do a youth career planning by definition, add the label that you see in the drop down as a youth element. Does that make sense? That's why
just to clarify. For current, I understand for new, totally on board with that. For current youth, I'm only adding the career planning episode as those services are being provided to youth.
Yes, but you need to add the brand new code, because if you were to try to use the old label that might be attached in their services listed that says youth career planning with the case management in parentheses at the end. Now, I know it looks the same, but that is a completely different code behind the scenes, right? So you could add episodes to that old youth career planning with the case management words in parentheses at the end. You could add episodes all day. Those won't extend participation. The new code in the dropdown that just says youth career planning, that needs to be added. It gets reported. And then if it went only when it's being done, add episodes to that. That will serve to extend their participation when you're doing those types of things, like giving them all, look at the definition, and then anything you do like that, new service added, use that one to document all the episodes. That
I
is
think
the
I have
code.
it.
That is the
So for
code. It's like the active trigger for
so
the
for
first.
current youth,
Uh-huh.
we will be adding the career planning service line if we are providing career planning services
Yes,
in the
please.
future.
Yes,
Okay,
you.
just making sure. That's
Yeah,
what
and
I'm doing for current youth. New youth, they are getting that as part of their
no,
ISS development service line. You went over that in the youth webinar. So that'll be part of that, I'm going to say front end process for the youth. But for current
no.
youth, we will add the career planning as we're providing that service going forward.
Okay, no, well, no. So current youth back in the day, before Friday, April 11th, their first pre-enrolling required, that included that youth career planning with the case management at the end. Don't use that anymore. Go ahead for current that had the old 3 pre-enrolling, give them, when you do it, the new youth career planning. That's the old. For all new youth, they now need the eligibility intake, objective assessment, and ISS. Those 3 before they can get their first element. There's no career planning in that because we figured out, we determined career planning is a true youth element. It can be their first enrolling. So for new youth, as of last Friday, like I said, the first 3, eligibility, objective assessment, ISS, if their first service element you provide them is a career planning advice, something, some analysis of all of those, add youth career planning. That could be their first enrolling element. Episodes added to that when done in accordance with the definition, it's significant. Those could extend their participation. That could go side by side along with a supportive service to extend participation and justify that supportive service. So it's both. Current need the new code, youth career planning. Existing need it also when it happens. So again, sorry to be so redundant here, but if you see any youth career planning with the case management at the end, cease and assist using that. It's got no logic tied. It's not going to be reported or trigger or extend participation whatsoever. I would just flat out ignore it. That's why we put a kind of a stamp of 2025 on the matrix. So we all have it clear in our head, like 23, we rolled it out. Those were the rules. April 2025 came along. These are the rules. And one of the most significant ones, again, to me, not that they're not all, is that youth career planning now is a youth enrolling active service, triggers participation, extends exit, is reported, excuse me, as an element. So, is that?
Okay. Yeah.
I understand.
Okay. Does
Great.
that
Thanks.
make
Thank you.
sense?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Paula and LaDonna, for the question. Scrolling back up here to find someone else. Some of these are similar about the going backwards. And remember, we mentioned this in our first overview session that when these changes went live, you won't have to worry about monitoring coming out later and not recognizing that that's changed. So they know that things are changing as of the end of the day on April 11th. So they know not to apply the new items to anything that occurred prior to that date. So I know I saw a couple questions that also could bring that about in someone's mind. Another question: if we enroll in out of school youth in alternative school and service for attending Title I GED class, can we now list the passing of GED as a measurable skill gain, Paula?
Where's the question? Could you read that again real quick?
It's if we enroll an out of school youth in alternative school
Mm-hmm.
and they're attending a Title II class, GED or HISET or something, can we now consider that subtest as an MSG?
Yes. Yes, that'll be provided with some updated MSG guidance, right, Mark? But yes, the subtests passed are now, it was determined that they are an MSG.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So yes.
All right. Trying to find one here. Some different people. We're going to have a lot more questions. So the best we're going to be able to do is get to a few more and answer them in the FAQ, and we'll be letting you know when we update that FAQ. So some of these again are referring to other slides. For last date of training, oftentimes if training providers include testing, exam fees, and their training costs, yet they don't push the customer to actually take the exam or inform career advisors when those testing dates for the customers are. If this happens, to avoid leaving the training service open indefinitely, would it be appropriate to close training for the last date the customer attended training per a program certificate of completion instead of waiting for testing that the customer may never take or do not provide information on? I don't know if someone else, I could probably answer that, but if someone else wants to jump in, Jim or.
Well, you should be in contact with the customer in order to ensure
Yeah.
that they are getting the exam done and not dependent on the provider in order to give you that information. So I think that would be the advice I would give, is to make sure you have those conversations with
Yeah, well, I think again, going back to think this through, if you have your last date of training, now you have if that's your last service or program element, now you have 90 days for the next one. And if that training was part of the training program, it would have to happen in the next 90 days. Otherwise, you've exceeded the 90 days. Otherwise, you would have had to have another service or program element too. So the unfortunate thing is, unless you know they're never going to take that test, you kind of have to wait the 90 days to know if that service is going to be provided, because it's part of, part of the training program, if that makes sense. Is that any clear to anyone? That you can't just say, well, I don't think they're ever going to take this, unless you know for certain they're never taking it. Because if all of a sudden they turn around and come in 60 days later and say, I'm ready for that test, I had some things come up or whatever, and you've already exited them, now you got to go through the process of dealing with that. So would others agree that you're kind of on the hook to wait the 90 days if they haven't taken the test in that period of time, right? Okay, we'll leave it at that. No one else adding on.
Mark?
Yeah.
David had a question. I just want to go back because it's again on the new youth career planning code service, asking what date for youth, what date should they use the youth career planning? The reason we didn't say, hey, go ahead and for all your youth and add the new one, youth career planning. I can't tell everyone to do that because I don't know if it was actually provided. So this is a service that we can only report it when it's done. So the answer is on the date it is provided. So starting 411, that code can be added, but if it wasn't done, don't add it just to have it there and available to be adding episodes, because the date does need to be accurate since it's being reported now. Does that make sense? I mean, I didn't want to go say, okay, everyone, there's this new code out there and you know you're going to be doing it, so go ahead and put it in then so you have it ready for all the episodes. Please report it on the first date it occurs. So that's what I was about to put it in chat, but it's the date.
And then others are kind of responding to my
Oh,
explanation of, with waiting for those tests. To me, and this is me, not our program, not speaking for anyone else here at OAT, this is part of what's got to be better done planning. And to accept someone saying, well, I think I'm going to take it or I might take it. I understand you got to help them, but you need a little bit more because this needs to be in their ISS or their IEP. How do you put entries in there when they're just maybes? And so I think you got to work with these participants or the programs, if it's attached to a program, to get something that's more than I think I'm going to do something, because it does create issues. I understand that. Um, and they need to understand that too, that, hey, this isn't an indefinite service that stays open for the rest of your life. We can't continue to allow that. We need to know, are you taking the test or not? And let's find a date and let's get it done as best as you can. And I know that's not as easy as I make it sound, but I think you just need to work with them a little closer and get those dates and put that in their IEP and ISS. And if it's not going to be done, then it didn't happen. To me, the I'm going to take it isn't something that's happening without something more concrete. Um, all right, a couple more questions, and sorry about that. Someone asked about IWIDS. We aren't quite yet to IWIDS 2.0. Hang in there. We're going to get there in a few months, and hopefully by the end of the year. Brenda, I'm not sure I understand the question. With the ETPL, should every participant receive a copy of the list, or is guidance on using it on WorkNet acceptable? I assume you're meaning the demand occupation training list. And yes, they should be given that. We've talked about this, I think, in a prior session under training services, that someone may come in with a preconceived notion of what it is they may want to go into. Even if that occupation is on the demand occupation training list, you should still show them the options, because maybe their decision or their thinking coming into the program was without the knowledge of what even was out there and available. And especially if it's not on the DODL, you have to start that conversation with them to say, here's the limitations of what we can fund. So let's start going through that. And you've done your interest surveys and all that, that we've talked about. So that entire list, and you should start with the state list, not any kind of local pared down list. They need to see the entire list and then start talking with them and say, okay, now that you have 180 or however many occupations are available that say their demand, let's start weeding out the ones you're not at all interested in, the ones you're not qualified, so we can figure out how we can get you qualified if you have interest, the ones that are not offered anywhere in your local area that you would travel to, et cetera, et cetera. And then you bring in your local policy that might state, well, we're only going to fund so much of the training, and what you're interested in might cost more than that. So are you able to find additional funds so that we can get through this? If not, then it's not an option because it can't be funded fully. So yes, the question to that, or answer to that question, Brenda, is you need to start with the full list when you start meeting with them, and get, the conversation will direct you from that point forward. Looking over here, I think Paula answered this. Paula, skills progression for subtests with GED and not the training milestone. Is that what they should be responding?
yes.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. Last one here. And I know I'm kind of bouncing around some of these. So when I have an old applicant still working with them, I add youth career planning and then add an episode. Well, this is anonymous, so I can't ask for details. I think there's something missing in that question to go to that. I'll go up there to Lisa's. Regarding the end date for an occupational service for those that have credential included in the program, sometimes the participant studies for an extended period of time, kind of going to the same questions we're talking about as far as timing for tests and all that and exams. So certificate of completion from the school indicates the last day of class and not the date of the credential. One, there will be a discrepancy between the documentation, and two, what happens if they never take that exam? So I think we've kind of touched on that, Lisa. At some point, you've run out of time to give them the exam because they've gone over the allowable time. We've answered yours, LaDonna. We've answered Lacey as far as moving forward with the new matrix. Nicole, same question. Joanna, so many of these that are open on the Q&A are actually questions we just answered in a couple different instances. So I think in interest of making sure we get you out of here on time, we've got just a couple last slides as reminders. Paul, if you'll go to those. Really appreciate all these questions. We're going to do our best to review all of these. So Antonio, if you can make sure those of us here at OET get all of the chat pod, all of the open and answered questions in the Q&A when you get a chance so that we can go through them all, sift through them. We've mentioned this before, just kind of recapping, we had 4 sessions. So if you weren't able to join some of those other than LWIA 7 staff who joined a session on, I think it was April 10th, to go over Career Connect changes, you'll be able to view any of these recordings that you may have missed or just want to go back and get a reminder of the discussion. You can either go to the videos and training materials information on the Illinois WorkNet or on the ISU page, WIOA Professional Development Workforce Webinars. Those links are in the PowerPoint. If you're not getting regular information from the Illinois State University Professional Development, they send out a weekly email showing all of the upcoming webinars. Some of those we at OET are providing, some of those Illinois State University's Center for Professional Support provides, or other partners sometimes asked to be included in that email. So please sign up for that so you can get those regularly and see any upcoming webinars. When you go to ePolicy on the very first page, you can see a webinar, or I'm sorry, a email link to register to receive ePolicy updates. So if you didn't get Laura's email last Friday, it's probably because you're not on her list. So make sure you sign up with her to receive that information regularly. She's been sending a lot of stuff, been busy getting updated information out to everyone.
Don't sign up with me, sign up through LWAX.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Okay.
it's on ePolicy, right? The link
No,
is on
LWAX is a separate portion of Illinois WorkNet. But if they don't hold one of the roles of individuals that should be in LWAX, there is a link on ePolicy where you can sign up to get notifications.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, everyone.
No problem.
Okay. I think that's next slide, Paula. Yeah, I thought that was the last slide. So again, keep your questions coming. We would prefer you using the FAQ page. If you can go back and get that link or go back to that page, Paula, to show them where that is. Oh, we didn't put it in this session. So just 1 second, I will get that and put it in the chat pod. All right, here you go. It's in the chat pod for you now. Please go there and submit those because when you submit, just Paul or I would mention this in the first session also. If you just submit to one of us, if we're out of the office for several days, then you're not going to get a response. Whereas if you submit through this, we can all see these because Illinois WorkNet staff are sending those to several of us, and we'll get those updated. What we're doing with those is we'll respond directly to the person who submits that. So hopefully you're including your name so we can track you down in your email. And then we'll also add it to the FAQ when we do updates. Again, we've got some sifting through what's on there now because some of it is outdated with these new updates. And we have all these new questions that have come in throughout the 4 webinars we provided. So we'll be revamping this quite a bit and providing you, we'll make sure we provide you notification. Maybe we'll have Laura or myself send that out to directors that can then funnel that down to staff to let you know that we've updated the FAQ. It's going to be a pretty lengthy list with all the questions that have come in, but again, we'll try to get to all of you as soon as we can. So really appreciate you everyone joining us for these 4 sessions. I hope all of them have been very informative. Get out there and use IWDS, use the new matrix. Let us know if you have issues, especially if you see something in the matrix you have question on. But if you see something in the system, let us know. Otherwise, submit it through the FAQ. And really appreciate Jim, Laura, Paula joining us. Antonio, thanks for taking over for Kirsten for a day. Look forward to working with you more in the future. We'll talk with all of you again soon. I'm sure we'll be having some additional webinars coming up in the next month or 2. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a great day. We'll get those Q&As sent over to everybody, to the presenters, and we should be good to go. All right. Bye, everyone.